right, hello everyone. Hi, welcome to Tuba, Bratislava's first Center for Architecture and City Planning, and welcome to the first mini-series Start with Children in 2026. My name is Petra Marko, I'm the head of the Metropolitan Institute of Bratislava. Welcome to everyone here at Tuba, but also welcome to those of you tuning in online to the live stream. This is our first live stream session, so bear with us. I hope everything will be working and you will see and hear everything. If not, then please do give us feedback, both here and online. The Metropolitan Institute is in charge of strategic urban planning, participatory placemaking, revitalization of public spaces, and spearheading green mobility initiatives for and with the city of Bratislava. And we also have a City for Children program, which is working by now with over 30 primary schools on improving the surroundings and safety around schools, but also working with children and the school communities in transforming and co-shaping their environment. The Start with Children platform was spearheaded in the last 2 years in form of two big conferences with support of our mayor, Matuš Valo, and with support of Bloomberg Philanthropies, bring together leading voices in urban planning, architecture, and city making, exploring how designing through the needs of children can create, in turn, cities that are good for everyone. This year, this lecture series is supported by Nadácia Allianz. Thank you very much. And the topic today is going to be housing for community, play, and local life. And I'm delighted to welcome Cany Ash with us today here from London. Cany is the co-founder and director of Ash Secular Architects, based in London. And they are known for their community-focused housing and neighborhood design rooted in everyday experiences. The philosophy of the practice is about softening the city, looking for the nooks and crannies and opportunities where we can densify, but we can also overlap different uses and create more opportunities for community to come together, for intergenerational connection, supporting care and play, and giving children real agency in shaping their environment. Cany leads Ash Secular to be ultra-inclusive when designing cities, mindful to the impact of projects on local economies, people, and their everyday experiences. And besides drawing on their built work today, she will be talking about their initiative Profitable Neighborhoods, which is also about creating economic opportunities and supporting the local economy and specific housing typologies that can encourage co-creation and community togetherness. After the talk, we will have space for questions for both of you here with us in the space, but also for those online. And I will share a code to queue into that later. But for now, please do give a warm welcome to Cany Ash. Cany, the stage is yours.
Well, thank you so much, all of you, for this initiative, which is fantastic. Obviously very optimistic. It's yellow. It's so on point at the moment, I believe. And this space that we're gathered in is really inspiring. I was here this morning in a workshop, and having these windows on the street and having this the detail and care that's gone into all of the surfaces. It's really pleasurable. So, yeah, Ash Secular try to think about opportunities where interaction can happen in all sorts of different ways. So it might be that you have a network of people that you don't actually know, that you wouldn't really know their name, or you wouldn't really fall into conversation, but there's just a little smile or a little acknowledgement that you live in the same space. And then sometimes as architects, we can find ways in which to make that more actualized in an outdoor living room scenario, like say here, where the end of a block of new housing can become a 3 walls of an outdoor space. And as people maybe go along this alley, It has little spaces off on the right there where you can sit down at a table and bring a coffee across from your front door, and other people might join you. Growing, this is what, oh no, sorry, okay. Growing food and creating spaces for events is really the way to start building neighborhoods. It's obviously also about architecture, but I think that these things need to be working in tandem. So the first thing is there's an assumption that we know what housing is about, but in fact, I think that from the workshop this morning and from all the conversations that we have with people in their 20s and 30s, something maybe needs to change. This historic model where you might have the nuclear family operating with definitely the male partner commuting and this lovely stable home atmosphere, that doesn't really map onto any kind of reality, and it leads to us to isolating practices. And these are very much alive and kicking in the UK. The government's promised 1.5 million homes, and their approach to delivering them seems to be to stick to this model of fake, coziness, and yet the relationship that you have is very much car-dominated. I suppose it was quite a big shock to move from a house form to mass housing. And as a result of that, I don't know why it's not advancing, but should I go back and forward? Could you move the slide? Oh, I need to maybe do that. So in the UK, there's a preponderance of houses which were built through the beginning of the last century. And in Slovakia, the opposite thing happened mid-century, that a lot of apartment buildings were built. But whether it's here or back in the UK, what am I doing wrong? Say Petrelka, Petrelka in here, or Park Hill, which is in Sheffield. It's a very famous innovative mass housing scheme that is kind of very beloved. Both of these projects are really have been privatized through different means, but the amount of state housing went from 100% to 92% now owner-occupied. And in the UK, we have a slightly different story, but generally, there's very little affordable housing. When we're thinking about how to do new housing, the aspirations of the 60s, where doorstep play, making playgrounds very close to flats, or streets in the air, and you'd have playgrounds on the first floor. These things have been, generally, when they've been renovated, have been lost. So here, for instance, you see it looks very nice with the green lawn and things, but those ground floors and first floors are all now WeWork type spaces and not housing. So it's very much pushing the play spaces away from that direct connection with the homes. So I think life is, as I was just saying, life is changing, and the core of it is that people are recognizing that connectivity is quite important, that the networks that we make at all levels have a value, and that when you break those networks and you isolate people in housing which is not connected to existing communities, sometimes some real value gets lost to those people and to the rest of the economy and city as well. So what needs to happen is us to maybe recognize that, I hope this clicker's going to start moving in, that we have to recognize that really who is our audience here? Who are the customers? And the customers are young people. As we age out and, drop off, we've got this whole generation and coming along. And because architecture and urbanism and city planning is quite a long game, we need to be mindful that it's these people that count. So we're generally, understanding that theatre and improvisation is a very good technique to bringing into working with communities around aspirations for change and for transformation. And this I think really helps, particularly getting young people in the driving seat, because they don't have to be themselves. They can take different personas on, and they can speak from that sort of imagined place, and that creates a richer conversation. We probably don't understand enough about the fact that to do really good architecture and urbanism, we need to play with the what-if scenarios, and we need to do it with the actual projects in mind, not as a theoretical thing, but at the time when things might be changing, that we think, okay, so it could be this, but it could be a number of other things, and maybe we should play these what-if games. So going back to children, young people, and agency, I don't know, who knows this map? It's quite famous in the UK. It's some research looking at the amount of freedom that children had at different periods in Sheffield. So there's the great-grandfather who's George, and he could go all the way from up here down to his fishing place down here and spend the day there. His child, Jack, was allowed into the woods. So that was like about a mile. Then Jack's kid, who's Vicky, she was allowed to go to the swimming pool, which was half a mile away. And then her child, Edward, was allowed to go to the end of the road, 300 meters. That's not nothing. But unfortunately, like 2026, I'm not sure that there's many people who are allowing their kids out of their front garden, the 10 meters. So how do we change this? How do we reverse all of this, which is clearly preventing children from developing an innate knowledge of their surroundings and neighborhood, such that they feel really confident about having an opinion. Because if you don't develop that first-hand knowledge, it's difficult to have that. And we, in the autumn of last year, we had an opportunity to think about, in quite a broad way, about what would we need to make a new town, and how could that new town really be starting with the children. So it was for 6,000 homes. This is our master plan in all soft grey there. We looked at Christopher Alexander, who has this pattern language book, which was very popular and trendy in the 70s. Not so much now. A lot of the ideas are slightly strange, including this one, but it's so compelling. So he was saying that when you're designing a neighborhood, what you need to do is you need to create a pedestrian-first network for children. And this network would be recognized by everybody in that wider community that you watch out for, it's like letting the ducks cross the road or something. You watch out for these children on their bikes and scooters and running around. But the thing that was particularly exciting about this is that he was saying these routes, they shouldn't just go through streets. They should also go through newspaper printing offices, dairies, bakeries, so that the children could see the productive side of the city, and that would give them a sense of understanding the machinery of what makes life tick. And we also is there one that missed? Doesn't really matter. We also thought about how do we create space where a 2-year-old feels great agency and authority and freedom to run. And so we were thinking about how can we make housing which, with shared yards, we called them yard palaces, because we thought, well, they can be really grand. Whoops, what did I do now? Just go back one. They can have a kind of grandeur with these great big gates. Do you see at the front? And it's definitely a place that you would choose to live if you wanted to have a lot of community parties. There's like bunting across. You probably have fairy lights there. It's a place where you can mend some bikes, motorbikes. You can also have trampolines and fires, and kids can make, cardboard cities. It's a permissive space which is safe and, suits some families. Not all families would want that, but some families are deprived of that. So it's a question of making space for people to make their own culture. And in order to make that even more kind of part of the general neighborhood, we thought that we would need this red building here, which is the Commons Barn. And that's a place where it doesn't take much to set up any kind of film screening or music event or, board games or something. It's just there, and you just turn on the lights, and maybe there's somebody who, fills in some forms for the insurance, but it doesn't become such a heavyweight building that people are tending to say no instead of yes. So a lot of this need for more agency is recognized, I think, across, what you're doing in Slovakia, and also this is Alice Ferguson's company that she set up in Bristol when she had young children and realized that they need the street. So with other parents, they closed off the street at both ends with dustbins, talked to all the neighbors, and then they would have, like, once a month, they would have a kind of play street. And this really took off through different parts of the UK. But it's not perfect. This is a kind of gamification where children can kind of collect points when they go to different parts of the city. So as well as outside, we're thinking about, okay, but what about agency inside? How do we make homes where there's enough corners and enough complexity, if you like, so that you feel that you can command a bit of the living room or dining room or kitchen for doing different activities? And how do you make more of the this front garden area, which very often is wasted? So covered space, but not heated, and place to make mess, a place to connect to the street. And that's the other side of the house, a bit of quiet space at the back there. And we built 3 of these as pilot things. Can I just ask, am I doing something wrong here? Is a battery missing or something? I need to point there. Oh, okay, okay, okay. So the same goes upstairs in the house. Like, what is a bedroom for? How can a bedroom be a territory that, as you're growing up in it, that you've got the chance to play, making real structures and scenarios and mini architectures, and that changes as you grow up. So too few people have that opportunity because of landlords saying, you can't really drill into these walls. You can't, can't change that or this. And so we were interested in how could we give more power to people who wanted to play on a slightly bigger scale with their community, their neighborhood. And Meanwhile Space is that opportunity, and we won a competition in London in 2010, started in 2011, to build out a space which was quite close to the Olympic Park. And we just took the hoarding and made a fancy gate at either end and started building something which, when it finished 4 years later, it was parts of that constructions that we made were delivered to other Meanwhile Spaces in London. So I think that there is a genealogy to interim urbanism where people get inspired by previous projects and also then in turn are able to inspire the next adventure. And here you can see it's like 1,500 square meters. It started off where we were promised some buildings, but then they demolished them. And so we had no electricity, no water. For a while, we were just getting skips delivered with water from kind contractors. Then we dug for our water. It was really completely off-grid and quite mad. But what people liked about it, when we asked them, why are you coming here? This is like quite rough space. And they were saying, well, if we went to the park, what would we do? There's a feeling that maybe parks are not really activated spaces. Nothing happens there, whilst a space like this, you've got the opportunity to grow food, to cook, to make fires, to do workshops, performances. And so we gradually built these structures. This was something that, a site which was so banal in some ways that it needed the surreal quality of like, oh, we're going to build a palm tree because that will make it feel like a proper holiday. So you walk off the street and suddenly there's bright sand and a palm tree. That's a trick that people like to play in beach bars. But in this part of East London, it was like really attractive. And we opened the site on April Fool's Day, which maybe in Slovakia has the same connotations. It's a bit of a joke. So we had all the women dressed up and as fish and doing bicycle races, which was a reference to, a woman needs a man like a fish needs a bicycle. So we had races around the site. And traditionally in East London, there's these a pearly king and queen who have a tenure for, 10 years or so. And so if you can get the pearly queen to open your site, well, it's a very good omen. And the pearly queens, the royalty of the pearly king and queen, they had very poor clothes, but a lot of very shiny, beautiful buttons. The kind of pearl buttons and bone buttons. And so they always look very grand. And we started with the children. This was called the Children's City. That's what the interim, when we were building out the site, that's how we brought people in. So this is a pillow fight. This is building a dome out of bricks that were delivered to the site. And, at nighttime, the monsters could come out. And things can look impressive when you have the space and the time to play at that scale with music and performance. So you could say, oh, well, that's all very well, you know, it's easy enough to do that kind of thing in with hippie space. But what about the people who, you know, are forced to live in whatever they can afford, but a house very often in the UK, it's a house and it's not that well connected, but it's like, it seems affordable. And we were very attracted by the idea of applying for a grant to look at how could we make that, if collectively, more affordable. Say if like 30 families came together and pooled their money and did the presentations together to investors, could that mean that people were buying getting a better deal than if they were just individually buying into the housing market? So this film is slightly long because it's an academic paper that we wrote, and so it had to cover all the points, but it's quite fun anyway.
In the UK, our housing needs are not being met. It's a big political issue. We are not building enough homes. Over the last 20 years, the UK has increasingly come to depend on a small number of large volume house builders, a well-structured industry. When the market is booming, it delivers housing in large chunks. Why? Now, more people are getting together and thinking about what they actually need rather than what the house builders want to give them, focusing on the livability of a home instead of the short-term appeal of a market product. Because building your own place doesn't have to be something only the well-off can consider. The National Planning Policy Framework places a duty on local authorities to measure and provide for the demand of those that wish to build their own homes. A pilot custom-build revolving loan fund via the government's Homes and Communities Agency provides access to short-term development finance for multi-unit custom-build schemes. Innovation is sweeping across the housing sector, with collective custom-build as a central strand. Groups with shared needs and interests can coalesce through crowd and cloud technology, unlocking powerful new ways to channel energy and finance projects that have never existed before. Off-site manufacture of houses gives a greater consistency in build quality and performance and quicker build times, further reducing risk for self-builders and their partners, priming a local knowledge base of skills and post-industrial development. In other countries, it is quite usual to be more involved in the design and build of your own home, and it is becoming more so here. The number of self-built homes in the UK already matches the output of any of our biggest house builders. With collective custom build, individual self-builders combine to take advantage of the opportunities that come from working together. Homes built collectively benefit from economies of scale and shared access to supply chains, and build future neighbourhoods based on mutual support and the sharing of risk. Such interconnected neighbourhoods deliver benefits in health, education and social cohesion. Collective custom build groups are enabled by partnership between local authorities, registered providers, developers, house builders or other third sector organisations, and the local support so needed to secure planning permissions. With sales guaranteed up front, collective custom build can act as a financial catalyst, a pre-financed starter phase for more traditional housing projects, a productive seedbed. Collective custom build can unlock home building opportunities on challenging sites, the kind of sites only too familiar to many local authorities and their developer partners. Self-builders are free to think more imaginatively about, say, a large edge-of-town greenfield site, typically anonymous and badly connected, looking for an identity and sense of place. A collective custom build development reaches out to surrounding neighbours and builds a new, distinct community, harnessing the potential of shared space. On smaller dispersed sites, such as urban brownfield land or the industrial fringes of rural areas, collective custom builders enjoy the opportunity to build dense developments of unconventionally shaped homes, cheek by jowl with existing buildings and infrastructure, creating an intriguing new quarter in the city. Or through re-inhabiting an existing building. There are custom builders searching for a genuine historical connection and sense of place, and the cracking of an otherwise doomed piece of heritage. More and more people are getting together and making things happen on the ground, and central government seems to be listening. Collective custom build, an idea whose time has come.
So we had that kind of culture in mind when we, thank you, when we won a competition to look at an old steelworks in Wales, which had employed everybody in that town, and now they were looking to turn it into a residential neighbourhood, or rather a residential development. The clients were, the family were called Maybe, and so it's a play with words, but we did the proposal to maybe would like to do this, and it's often quite difficult to suggest crazy ideas to clients, but if they have a name like Maybe, it's a gift, you know. So maybe they desire a manifesto rather than a master plan, and maybe maybe they want to make a foundation that builds on the history of the site as a steelmaking community, and wants to find ways to make that productive, even as it's a residential neighborhood, to bring in new forms of making and industry and culture into that for families. And also, you know, an old boat is a catalyst to create a different kind of hangout. The bridge overhead is by Brunel, a very famous engineer. So sometimes you just pick up on these clues, and you can, instead of, you know, disposing of the boat, it becomes a hero of the neighborhood. So then we had an opportunity to move into a whole different side of the country. We won 2 developer competitions to work on an industrial valley, which was a place where coal was brought down to a small river and loaded onto boats. It was also a place where there was pigeon loft fanciers, music clubs, a series of kind of older buildings that had been taken over by some odd storage. Nothing much was happening there in some ways, because it had all just, there was a depression that settled on the valley. And we did some drawing for the master plan for the site, but we were also then asked to tackle this site with the orange building, which was an old ice factory. And we remediated this site. We talked to people around and about to find who would want to live there, because it wasn't an obvious kind of place, and had those discussions. And when we talked to people, they really wanted something different, because they were all attracted to the Oosburn, because it was a different part of the city. It didn't feel suburban. It wasn't city centre. It was the industrial fringes, and that was something that attracted them. So in building homes, they wanted a bit of outdoor space, but they didn't particularly want it privatized. They were excited about the idea of growing spaces, allotments, vegetables, and we wanted to do something which allowed people to views to the south and to the west. So the logical thing to do here was to build a build the housing along the contours of the site, because it's a very steeply sloping site. This is this river floods, so we had flood problems. There's also radion in the ground, so we had to do membranes. So this wasn't the absolute cheapest way to develop the site, because we had step foundations and all of these membranes to deal with, and the various complexities with the way that we decided to splay the homes and curve the layout. But all the homes are just square boxes, so it wasn't that complicated. And both the clients and the local authority, they loved this scheme because the way that it opened views for everyone to the south and west and to the river. So we built it, and this river wall along here was falling into the river, so we filled up big bags of rocks to make a permeable bastion to restrain the land from the river. We built little islands for otters. There were a lot of costs associated with developing this land, but in the end, they were 74 homes, and it cost like £9 million. And actually, that's quite good in terms of people could buy these homes at affordable prices. And here you can see the way that they had pocket back gardens which stepped down the slope, and that they could come into this space together. 2 years later, we went back and talked to people living there to find out what they felt about it. There's a website you can look at called peopleofthemailings.uk, and we collected their thoughts, but through recordings, and so it's not just turning into a report. It's like honouring the direct voice of those people. And this was Vicky, who lived in one of the tower houses, who had a load of teenagers. This is Harry and Lauren. He was a motorbike stunt man with loads of different leather jackets. She was doing a master's in public space as through the writings of Cicero, so very academic. And I'm saying this because it's always strange when you assume that you know what people are about, and then people are always more interesting and complex than you imagine. And they loved catching the last of the sun, so they were really aware of the way that the views and the sun paths allowed them to live in that space. It was quite a battle to get those wooden boxes made, because normally you just follow the code where it says you need to recoup rainwater, but then you just have these plastic green or black containers. And we said, no, we want to calm them down. We want people to be able to put plants on them. But we never really thought people would also sit on them. This guy is like a professor of global equality, and he moved in and loved the yellow crane from the scrapyard. But he's I just looked him up recently, and he's doing he's written papers about the danger of algorithms being used to define different rental personas. So you might, the landlords know a lot about you and what they can trust in terms of your income and things. But it's a kind of profiling which is really dangerous, and it's a redlining of space. He's quite cool. And this guy was super critical but really good. I mean, he found all of the spaces where the airtightness was not right. He was like a very technical eco-warrior. And I suppose these people are just they're just total British humour, because they said that actually the house had made their family life easier and they were having less arguments. And then as they were talking, and you can hear this on the website, they start arguing about whether it did in fact stop them arguing. And they're just fun. So yeah, it's a total collage of spaces. And what was I going to say about this? Like, it's just a place that where you can feel the layers of time and history and different kinds of. This was a shipping magnate who built that palace, which has some kind of Chinese and Asian feelings to it. But and these are very plain. All of the windows are exactly the same, but each of these house forms has 2 front doors, and so it allows you to have 2 flats in one house form, and that's something that I'm just interested in showing you a bit more of. So just before I talk about the profitable neighbourhoods, this is a project which should be being built by now. It's going to hopefully get going this year. And it's all, it's a car-free development. It's built out of hempcrete, which has a sort of timber frame inside the wall, and then 500 mil thick of hemp and lime. And these, there's 8 architects involved and 700 homes, and we've got permission for the first part of that in a courtyard, which is called Jacobs Square, after Jane Jacobs. And I suppose what I want you to look at is the way that when you come to your front doors, you couldn't come to your front doors at the back, at the top, because there was a big level change, and you couldn't from the river. The only places that you could come and have a very conventional front and back to your house was at the bottom, with that little row, and it kind of made a nice ambiguity to where you came in, because you could come in at the back, which is actually the front, which is the square. And that area in the middle of the plan is a place which is sunk down 400 mil, a place to allow the in flood times to absorb some water. But it's also the level of the water table, so we couldn't go lower. So this was kind of like a magic level, which really helped this feel like a good square, because you could sit all the way around there, and it just felt like you were sitting on a bench. It was just the right height, and it allowed that feeling of sitting outside your front door on a kind of stoop, and the central area which you could build platforms on, so it didn't just have to be a place for sustainable urban drainage. It could also be a place for play and a place to for a little shed and allotments. I'll just show you the picture. So here you are, you can see people sitting on that bench in the foreground, people sitting outside their front doors there. It was quite difficult to make sure that the fire engineering worked, so that we had a kind of a place where you could pick up the water halfway down there, because all of this was obviously car-free, and so fire engine free. But the idea is that it's permeable and people can walk in and out of this place. It's not a cul-de-sac. If you're coming along the riverside path, you can come over into it, or if you're walking along from the other way, I can show you. In order to explain to the planners why some of these facades look different, we talked about playing cards, and that some would be head cards like a king or queen or jack, some would be playing cards. and that seemed to work to enliven these duplexes, which you can see here that the idea is that artists would take over some of these facades. So we're creating some permissiveness at planning stage so that those things can happen. And so we thought, well, what would be great is if we could create suburban housing which was so dense that it could be more affordable for people. And we made a website which is... Can I just catch up with myself, actually? That would be quite handy. Yeah, so people said, oh, well, it's okay, you can do it up north, you can do it in Newcastle, because it's really cheap up there, and you can do it in Lewis, because it's full of rich hippies. But, like, what about ordinary people? And so we wanted to look at something on the demand side, which looked at what do people really want, and also make it profitable for the developers who could walk away with their 30% profit, but they wouldn't leave people impoverished behind them. It would also allow people to run their businesses and create wealth for themselves, so, and stay within planetary boundaries. So we said it's really not great when people spend so much time commuting that they can't really participate in their neighborhoods. And the whole idea about this Englishman's castle, as it's called, which is your house, it goes down to Australia, it goes up to heaven, it's your space. It's a little bit oversold and underdelivered in some of those developments I showed you at the beginning. And what if we had something called the twins, which is where you live in your own house with 2 front doors with your neighbor, and they have that milky bit on the upper 2 floors with a really generous terrace. And it's a private terrace because next door to them there's another twins, so you could call it the quadruplets. But that terrace is not overlooking because we've toggled the top maisonette 180 degrees. And what that also creates is a feeling of a 3-story neighborhood, but with some 4-story gable ends. So when you're walking along, those shadows created by that crenellation are quite dramatic and quite enlivening. But the CO2 is low, the net to gross is 100%. It does make apartment living look quite a lot more expensive. So we talked to quite a lot of people, a lot of these people interested in the topic because they're architects or urbanists or they work in some social setting. But they were all very clear about the fact that isolation is dangerous and not something we should be doing. And yeah, so the car-dominated landscapes had to stop. And I think that we discussed this idea of what if you could you could design your neighborhood at any density, and the planners didn't have the right to say, no, that's not the correct density because you're designing it in this place next to a village, so it needs to be at the same density as the village. Suppose there's not a lot of flexibility in this system between the hard economics and the fact AI is coming in and people are going to be struggling to earn enough in their jobs. So we need to find the flexibility, and it feels like the flexibility is the changing our ideas about density, because they're all good places, these patterns. We could learn from other places, and with climate change, you know, perhaps we don't want wide streets anymore. I know in Slovakia you have also the issue of 1 hour of sunlight at, you know, a certain day in March, and perhaps that needs to be rethought because it's dictating too much. It's like the tail is wagging the dog, and we could have more fun and make more space for people. So, of course, if you join the dots, everything makes perfect sense. It's like, it almost feels like a given. It's an alignment of common sense. And, you know, when people talk about, oh, yes, but, you know, in the real world, we have spreadsheets, we have viability to deal with. Well, it's very interesting because their spreadsheets are not looking at the true costs to our society and our communities, which needs to include the costs of isolation in terms of getting people to hospitals. And, I mean, you can imagine, I won't go through this slide, but you can imagine that it's the hard costs are not the true costs. The soft costs have to be included. And it's not really an okay way to live, to have your major relationship in your life with the back boot of your car. That's not a very creative relationship, when in fact, you know, you could be having this much richer neighborhood life where you have all sorts of conversations, short and long, throughout the day, and you're weaving more empathy, connectivity, wealth for young people, because through chat, obviously, you get tips about where to look for work, or who might look after your kid, or how to bring you know, older people together. It's just a win-win situation. And, you know, these profitable neighborhood houses, they can frame public space. It's a repetitive module, but you can build different things at the end. It's obviously kind of quite responsive in the end, a single house form compared to an apartment block, which is a lumpier thing. So, and you save 35% on the emissions. It's difficult to know what not to like, really. So we asked lots of people in the housing field, in government, to come to round tables, and we collected some of their voices, and we also developed a tool on the iPad, a little pen, which can draw our twins. So when you draw a line, it draws twins, and it makes it look like a CAD plan, but in fact, you've just drawn it quickly. So that allowed us to do, like, there's no CAD in that, but when the Wales, the government in Wales asked us to look at building homes around a station with a lot of complex waterways and railways to deal with, a mixed-use community, it was quick to do that. You know, we could do it in an afternoon, and we just have a few rules. The terraces, they have to go north-south, so we get enough sun penetration, and east-west light with the dual aspect homes. And we have to break them with footpaths. We just have 20 twins, then it has to be a footpath. So we keep the permeability going across the grain. And at the ends of the blocks, we turn the twins through 90 degrees, so we get faces facing us when we're looking. And we have this this idea that it's really good to put trees in the area where you drive to your front door to drop off a package, and then the gardens to be really open. So we call that the belly, and then the bow tie. So streets don't have to be straight, and there's quite good reasons when you're driving out tarmac to make them not straight, because the width when you come in here between the terraces, it needs to be wide enough to drive your fire engine in, but it doesn't need to be wider than that. So you can start planting trees in the middle. And this is just to show you how the density design drills work. We were always able to double and triple the amount of homes that were assumed for public land. This is all public land that's on a website through the Homes England Land Hub, it's called. and working to see where the desire lines are. A lot of that is quite obvious, and then if you can, you work with this tool, you can quite quickly fill up these spaces and work out, is that 200 homes, 500 homes, 1,000 homes. And when we're thinking about these homes, we're thinking not really about just residential space, because it was clear in COVID that a lot of things happen in the home and always have, that people have run businesses, family concerns from their living room. And it's very important that we all have different strings to our bow, that we can earn money in different ways. So we worked with somebody called Francis Hollis, who'd done a study on what kinds of things were people doing in East London in their homes, and then we illustrated that with a series of little animations. The brown characters, they're the ones who are like cleaning the house and doing the housework. But there's, manicures and eBay sellers, all sorts of seamstresses. It's amazing how many things people actually do inside the home. I think it finishes with the architect. Baby minder architect. So there is a competition, which is an ideas competition in the UK, which has become quite famous, called the Davidson Prize. And it's not aiming at architecture as such. It's aiming at, like, how do architects communicate? And not just architects, but people in urbanism. How do you communicate your ideas to lay people, to people who are not in your professional field? And we wanted to show the profitable neighborhoods as an idea where a lot of people who were working from home, we want to show the complexity that happens inside a house, and that by doubling up the front doors and having two homes in one house form, that we could create they're just very silly 30-second videos which try and illustrate, on the left, what goes on in the house, in the middle, why we're interested in a town up north which has two coal mines in the center of town, which each of those sites are large enough for 800 homes, whilst they're building homes in isolated communities. We wanted to demonstrate that could happen in Seaham. And then the jury, because we got through to the second round, was saying, well, how do you know people want to live so close together? What is this conviction that you have that people want to double their density? So then we wanted to show the beauty of living in that tighter way. So, first of all,
1.5 million more driveways. Or, instead of tarmac, more homes. A home on a home. Somewhere for everyone.
Deeply rooted yet adaptable, with your own front door and garden room.
For all kinds of lives.
Future-proof yet familiar.
One house, two homes.
and then why did we choose Seaham?
Yes, Seaham, born and bred. I've got so many stories I could recollect of Seaham Harbour. We had the most beautiful pieces of glass on the beach. Ice cream, an absolute delight if you could afford monkey's blood. Plastic coins for doggets. Learning to swim and not drowning at the end of this belt. We walked everywhere. We walked to my aunties, we walked to my grandparents. No one had cars. And my father worked down in the colliery. We did everything together as a village, as a family. Everyone that lived around us, we all went on holiday together. It is a wonderful place, and it does need this new generation to make it a place to live, to enjoy, to love for the future.
So that lady was my age, and she used to get into these old buses, and they'd, 60 families would go together, and all the children would play together for 2 weeks. And that seems like crazy in my lifetime that was all happening, and that there were so few cars. So it made me feel like it's easy enough to get back there, really. Then this was our propaganda for the neighborhood. I don't know where the sound is. What have I done wrong? I think it was working before, wasn't it?
It's a little community.
It's not just tea, it's the heart of the place. Like, aye, these lot, me mates, this is our spot.
They'd have like carnivals, and there'd be like little singing groups on where my daughter would go to, and they'd get dressed up as pirates.
In and out of each other's places. And
you can't go far without bumping into someone you know.
I always say hello to you.
Even teenagers have got a place to play.
Car clubs, Cany. Wheels there when you need them, and now when you don't.
I'm now cycling to work.
To the station. Barely a stroll. You're laughing.
Can have a little back garden so they can sit and chill in, or take the grandbairns in.
Little garden, just somewhere nice, like best move I made, I have to say.
Alfie, in for your tea now.
There's a community spirit here. You don't get in very many places.
Thanks. So this is the last project. It's being built at the moment in London. It's a place that they couldn't get permission for, and they brought us in, and we said, well, you have to make a linear park, so maybe some of that park can be on the roof. And for that reason, we think that 31 rooftops will be inhabited. And that's really exciting, because it is a place where there is enough light and there is enough space right through the year to make community. So I'm just going to show this, which was the first cartoon film. We just did a drawing, and then we moved little characters around, stick figures, to explain the vision. That was back in 2015.
Get some red wine.
So how's it going? Like, you've been working all night, haven't you? What I like about this, different.
Ladies and gentlemen, time for the show.
Did you?
Serving us fantastic lessons all the time. We don't know.
I'll stop here. You've seen that politician? We were about to see them go and jump out of grass.
Bit of propaganda. But the important thing is not one place but many, which is the next thing. Not one place but many, because that's a real city scenario. So this is where we protected the wilder spaces along the canal and the older buildings. This is it being built. This is just to show you on the model the way that we thought about these roof gardens with little greenhouses. Maybe you can see them dotted around. And we got cattle troughs, which are the cheapest kind of planter, so that couldn't be dumbed down any further. And we're really optimistic this is going to be really exciting. Okay, so we wanted every rooftop to be special. And so we thought it would be great if each rooftop had a different tree, because there are quite a lot of trees associated. Some have like 15 trees on them. So it would be like a little wood. And then if you're next to another tree species, then there's a humor and a character that comes through from just the fact that the trees are making the character rather than the people. So we called it roof wood, and here you can see how many people and square meters it is, how many apartments, 6 apartments, 16 people, or some places it's like 37 apartments and 128 people. So they're all different sizes. But one of them, and this is exciting, is going to be a public terrace. Okay, I missed one of those, but that's fine. You can see somebody coming out of the greenhouse, and in the night that greenhouse will be gently lit, so it's kind of quite a soft space to come out, a bit romantic. It's a place where the trees are actually pre-planted, and then the planting around the edge is pre-planted, but these troughs in the middle, they'll be planted and maintained by residents. And you can see the other rooftops across the. It's big enough for a party, for a birthday cake to come out, and whoops, sorry. I'll see if I can go back to that one because it's quite important. It's I can't. Oh yes, I can. Thanks. So the play space was quite controversial because we wanted to make this platform, which was a simple platform, and then the children brought up their toys or, adapted it to what they needed. But in the end, we lost, and so there's going to be rubber floors in these terraces with like one little duck in the middle, because that is deemed to be proper play space, and this wasn't deemed proper play space. So you don't win them all. And this is the last slide, and it's just to say, at the end of the day, it's just nice to be able to get up onto the roof and chill out. And, either it's a Zoom call or it's just a chat or it's playing with your kid. But I think that this is about as romantic as it can get with proper densities and proper rooftops. Thanks.
Cany, we'll continue with having a little chat here,
okay.
Please. Okay. And there's some water for you. I think we all want to go on the rooftop on in Wickside and watch Titanic now. So thank you so much for all the lovely illustrations and little films and snippets. And it's been quite amazing to see the work coming together in the buildings and under construction. So really looking forward to Wickside and next time I visit London. We've got a little QR code for those of you who'd like to have a think about some questions. People in the room, you can just ask for the microphone and it will come to you, or you can post them on through Slido with a hashtag SWCH. That's for Start with Children. And for those of you online who are still with us, I hope. Perhaps let me start with sort of a joint theme that you've got across your projects. You kind of don't say the word density a lot, but actually it's at the center of creating the connection and the layering. And there's a really interesting way that you sell it, and you call it propaganda, but you know, in very interesting way, the narrative and the tools that you use to convey the idea to your clients. So perhaps I'm curious, how effective is that, and what sort of clients are drawn to your work, because there needs to be a kind of alignment on the vision and the values, and who's kind of forward-looking to build those types of projects that you showed us, because they seem more complex and complicated, but they have a lot more added value over time.
I think it's fair to say that each of those clients are quite special. Starting in the little village that we were talking about this morning, that's somebody who would set up a festival for inventors and invite inventors throughout the UK to come up with a better washing line, and they'd all arrive, and it's quite quirky. I think that with Wickside, it's some Irish contractors who actually pour a lot of concrete and are really good at it, but they also had spent 5 years trying to get planning permission on that site, and so they were looking for a narrative. So I suppose some clients come with their narrative and are looking for to storytell with you, and others just want you to kind of like get us out of here, give us a reason, a foundational myth, if you like, for this community to exist.
So with your approach to typology and the fine grain of it, you're achieving higher density, but the livability is also there, and it's sort of maxed out, like we've seen on the rooftops or in the courtyards, and there's a lot of attention to detail with the sunken garden, you know, like doubling as a water attenuation kind of space, and at the same time as a community space. Where am I going with the next question then? I think we're all curious to know about profitable neighborhoods and whether there's a pilot from that project, because a lot of thinking has gone into it and the economics of it, of the double house or double flat in a house. And where do you think your first client for that is going to come from, public, private sector, or sort of, it reminds me a little bit of Marmalade Lane and the similar sort of co-housing projects and that are being spearheaded across the UK, different parts.
If I'm giving you the honest answer, I wish I knew. I think this was a project that 2 years ago, when the government were really pushing for housing to go forward, we were very worried about house builders doing the normal kind of sprawl, which is like very unprofitable, we feel, landscapes. And we've seen them, you've seen them, you know, spreading across the UK. But at the moment, there's a crisis in confidence in housing. And maybe you've heard about that. There's hardly any starts, even in the projects which have got planning permission. So I think this might be an idea whose time will come in 5 years' time, you know.
I mean, we know that one of your clients, actually in Slovakia, your project, one of the projects that you designed, you didn't show it tonight, but it's in Bernolakovo. It's called Manufactura. It's under construction, and your client there is a couple of architects and developers. So I'm curious, whether you think more architects should become developers?
Absolutely.
Because this is perhaps a theme that's going around, because they can see that perhaps the long term, and if they're not exiting immediately, I mean, there's the financial models and so on. Is there any do we have any questions from the floor here, or there's one in the first row, please? Can we have a microphone to the first row?
Yeah, hello, my name is Clara. I was just curious whether you are familiar with the concept of permaculture, because I see you are using the principles and their logic, I think, and I wanted to ask whether you were thinking about maybe integrating more food production in these co-housing systems, so it will have even more functions.
So the question was about more food production in the co-housing.
I think people, it really brings people together to plan what to grow and then to actually eat something together. So I think it's hugely beneficial in terms of building social capital. Even if you can't really grow enough tomatoes for your whole summer, you can have a few feasts. And I think there is a lot of food production which could take place on top of apartment buildings, and permaculture principles, developed through the Schumacher colleges and magazines are inspiring for container growing, because it understands that you don't need to dig up lots and lots of earth. You just need to understand the structure of soil and the amounts of nutrients and layers, if you like, of material. So are you growing food?
Yeah, actually I'm head of Permaculture Association for
Oh,
Slovak Natural, so that's why I was asking, because it's a designing system for, it's not only about agriculture these days. You could maybe use it in these projects, because you can actually make enough food in this on this area, even when it's this dense. I think
it's brilliant.
It's really great. Thank you.
Thank you. We've got a question about the communication and how the short films and illustrations, and it's very different to presenting people with CAD drawings or with CGI visualizations that can feel kind of very marketing, kind of like you're selling me this sort of lifestyle or something. So how is it helping you to communicate with different stakeholders, and has it been useful in what sort of, like, not just towards clients, but perhaps in the workshops and the co-design phases, and how do you generally work with your illustration and film techniques?
I think it works. I don't know. I think in Malaski it was working really well to be able to show some cartoon imagery rather than straight CGI imagery. But I also feel in architecture it's quite silent. There's not enough voices or humor or movement. And so it's very difficult for people to put themselves in the future places, because they're not, they're like snapshots, and there's somebody else's snapshot. Whilst when you see something move and you're hearing the sounds of
well, the sounds particularly, the sounds make it really, you can really imagine, being there and being at the event and then watching that film on the rooftop. So it's very compelling, and it just gives it a completely different dimension. And I know a little bit that you're very smart in your practice. You're using a lot of AI tools to actually do these animations and films. So that's quite impressive, because as a small practice, you're kind of very agile in the way that you use your resources, the human resources, and then you draw on all these, the voices of the people you were telling me about. You can choose the different accents and locally specific and so on.
So some of the comments saved for the CM project were straight from people that we met, but sometimes they said things but in a more rambling way, and we wanted to condense that thought. So I think it's then okay to use AI voices with people's permission, because it's a tool that can be used. And I think it's all to do with, as you say, putting yourself in the place, and you can have an opinion if you've been in that future place, even if it's just through watching a cartoon. Whilst if you haven't been there, then you're not really sure what you think. So I think it's in its infancy. More architects need to do more animation and get more voices into exploring the potential.
Yeah, I think it's very refreshing to sort of the standard way of communicating. We've got another question about the changing demographics, and in your profitable neighborhoods, we've got this duplex or double house, and it's got quite a few stairs in it. So I guess people are wondering how that might adapt in the future because of the growing elderly population and people getting older and more older people. So whether there, how did you think about profitable neighborhoods and adaptability for wheelchair and people with accidents, etc.?
So in a profitable neighborhood, if you have 4 stories, the 25% of the space can be used for people with access needs on the ground floor, and that can be extended, and 75% of the space people have to, maybe in a triplex above a flat, have to walk upstairs. But then if you talk to doctors, that's what they want us all to do, that we need to walk up lots of stairs. And it's a kind of exercise which doesn't involve going to the gym. It's just something that you do in your daily life, and it just keeps your heart really healthy. So I think apartment living is not actually good for us.
I mean, at some point, I remember I came across the statistics that every step you take, you add 2 seconds to your lifetime. So, you know, I think of it every time I press the lift button. If I do take the lift, it makes me feel bad. I'm shortening my life. Apparently, it's also good for kids, because when small children grow up in spaces with stairs around them, you know, it makes them move, and it helps with their motor skills and with their mobility skills and so on. So it's absolutely...
It's another landscape, isn't it, within the home, where they can tell stories and think about waterfalls and car chases or whatever. Yeah.
There's another question about the community housing in the UK, and whether there's sufficient purchasing power to support it, whether there's a growing interest.
There's definitely a growing interest. There's a community-led housing movement which is growing all the time, and we need to just have more pilot projects to demonstrate that it's all feasible.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose there needs to be more support also from government level of these types of projects. In Slovakia, we haven't really got them yet, but there's quite a lot of interest, particularly from younger generations. We have this group, Tuba Youth, who are active in our space here in this architecture center. And one of the topics that they are self-organizing talks, and some of them are in the audience tonight here with us, is about community housing and co-housing, and thinking about, you know, how do we, how does the next generation live in the city and benefit from the city and not have to move outside because of the affordability of housing in inner city. A lot of your work that you showed actually makes use of brownfield sites, and despite the fact that there's a lot of remediation that's financially very costly, you've managed, because of the density, but also somehow it's not just the financial model, but I believe in some of the projects you kind of create a destination almost, like people want to come to it. And you mentioned it this morning when we had the workshop. So perhaps tell us a little bit more how that, you know, in the middle of nowhere, let's say, really abandoned sort of industrial space, not in an inner city, but just somewhere on the outskirts of a smaller town, how do you create that that livability and that attraction that people would just kind of go like, yes, that's where I want to go?
I think it's like water flows into voids and spaces. Creativity often flows into those places where there's just a chink in the armor of the capital real estate market, so that if it's not immediately attractive, perhaps it belongs to government, perhaps it's something where the site has somehow been paid for, or the homes or the buildings on it have already been paid for by the last generations. That's the place that we can come in and reinvent things. So I think that, wasn't there an old chemistry school that Imagine were involved in reinventing for homes? I think every city has opportunities to do this.
And integrating the work space within the home is a big factor, right? Because if some of those places are a little bit more remote from bigger cities and bigger urban centers, that makes it very attractive. If you can have enough space to to create, to make things at home, to
Absolutely. And for women
that.
as well, if they're
Yeah.
actually having a family, it becomes crucial.
Yes, yes, and there's a lot of greenery and we talked about food growing and generally. So there's somebody's curious whether you do have a landscape architect in house or whether you collaborate with landscape architects on projects.
Yes, so we collaborate, say, with planting with different nurseries, and we worked with.
So it's more gardening and planting based rather than landscape as a sort of proposing this lovely landscape. It's more making and
I think we're quite interested
gardening.
in landscape as architects, and so we haven't done that qualification, but we make landscapes and we love doing that.
And you mentioned the hempcrete as well, so you're thinking about sustainable construction methods.
Yes.
And the hempcrete project, just out of curiosity, financially, how does it work? Is it viable? Like, is it comparable to traditional techniques? Was it difficult to persuade the clients to go with hempcrete?
Well, the client, who's called Human Nature, they have a team within their studio, which is just looking and comparing different kinds of hempcrete blocks and stick and loose pore forms of construction. So I think it will depend when the project kicks off, what prices come in from different innovators, because it is an area in which there's a lot of new entrants into that construction.
There's another question about the concept of the twins, whether it's new. I mean, I suppose it really reminds me of, the traditional Victorian house, because it used to have, two apartments, one sort of below, like sunken a little bit, and one above. Whether that was the inspiration for the twin house, and whether there are any other examples of twin houses that have been tested and tried.
Yes, there's very often a London house is divided into two, but you go in through the same front door, and then, or somebody comes in through the basement sometimes. But there's quite a lot of examples all in different cities where there are two front doors. So in Walthamstow, there's a famous one which is called the Warner Estate, where there's two front doors and they're angled a little bit, and one goes upstairs and one stays. And also in Newcastle, there's something called the Tyneside Flat, which is, the Tyne is the big river, and the Tyneside Flat was always two front doors, and the family would live on the ground and then rent the upper bit to pay for it. So yes, it's traditional.
Have we got any questions from people here? There's one question here. Yes. Please wait for the microphone, because if people are online, they wouldn't be able to hear you.
Okay, thank you. It was really inspiring. I wrote the question. So I was really interested in the project of People of Mailing. That's really good. But I'm wondering how you treat the later phases when people are living already, and how you treat these user behavior feedback, let's say, and how you get people more involved when after they are leaving, like to make more flexible these spaces of their time. Because I'm asking this because usually these models of creating co-housing and flexible community spaces are working well at the beginning, but there's always this struggle later on how to operate it and maintain it, and also engage people to be part of that. So I'm wondering if you are, as architect, or your team is also following this process, and how you're using these for other pilot projects, and to continue this, of course.
I think it's a really good question. I mean, the research and development that you do as an architect has to be looking at like what you thought might work, and then going to see, does it work, or does it work in a surprising way? And in June, they've invited us up to celebrate 10 years of the mailings. So I think I'm going to meet a lot more people, and I'll be able to perhaps go into a lot more of their homes. And the way that we did it with People of the Mailings is we literally just arrived, and we dropped in little notes through their front doors, because we didn't know them, and said, if you come to the bar in the old kiln, then we'll buy you a drink. And then maybe like 5 people came. But then they phoned up other people, and in the end, we had quite a good party in the bar. And then the next day, we were able to go and film those people and talk to them.
I think that's a much nicer way of doing post-occupancy evaluation than having those dry reports, and you can, you get a sense that you actually know these people and their life stories and what happened to them and what they're interested in. So that's lovely, and we'll look forward to the next update on that. I'm afraid this is all the time that we have, unless anybody has a very, very pressing question. But thank you so much for joining us tonight for the first of Start With Children mini-series this year at Tuba in Bratislava. Follow us on startwithchildren.com for the upcoming next talks and lectures. And now a big round of applause for our first guest, Cany Ash. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.